My name is Steve, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm 30 years old. I come from a very big family. I'm the youngest of five, and growing up, I always knew there was something different about me, but I just wasn't sure what it was. And I never bothered to ask about it. I just, it was just something that was there. And it wasn't until I got to college where I really started to kind of look at that and try to understand what it was. And it got to the point where I was like, yeah, I think I'm gay. That's what this thing has been. And the environment in college was so welcoming of that. I went to art school, and it was sort of one of those things where there were a lot of other gay students, and I saw that and was like, okay, well, maybe I can do it. I can really kind of start to tell people. I decided to tell my friend Melissa. She was the very first person I told, and she she thought that I was going to tell her that I was in love with her, or it was like something was really wrong. But she was really welcoming of it, and I told my friend Lisa the next day. She had the same reaction, but they were both very welcoming of it, and it really kind of gave me the sort of energy and the confidence to tell other people. So I was just coming out left and right to people, but it was great. It's really, when I got to that point, it was like life just felt so much better for me. It was a lot lighter in a weird way. There was no more of the kind of avoiding certain situations or certain discussions. I felt very comfortable. Moving on, when I pretty much had come out to everyone else, all that was left was my family, and I knew that's where the issue was really going to be. Now, after I graduated, I moved home for a while, and there was one day where I was at home with my sister, and she came and she sat with me, and she was asking me a lot of questions about college and the people I hung out with and things like that. And she ended up asking if I had a girlfriend at any point in time, and I told her no. And then she asked if I had a boyfriend, because I feel like this was sort of on my family's mind at the time. They started to kind of think. So when she asked that, I responded by saying something to the effect of that I was in the market for one. And she looked at me, and she was very shocked, and she began to cry, which I expected. And she ended up calling my other sister on the phone, almost right away, and told her. So they were both kind of going through it. They were pretty emotional about it. And, part of me was like, why? But, I just knew that this was going to be a big issue for them, because I wasn't necessarily going to live up to whatever sort of expectation they had for me. But anyway, days later, I had actually realized that when I came out to them, that day was National Coming Out Day. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I just didn't know. So I always found that kind of fascinating. So later on, I called my brother. I told him. He was totally fine with it, which I also expected. But I knew that the major battle was going to be my parents. So they helped my brother and sisters. They helped me they coached me kind of on how to maybe approach that whole topic with them. But I finally decided to do it on a Sunday when they were coming home from church, which I feel like isn't the best timing, because my parents are Jamaican, very conservative, very traditional. So it wasn't, I feel like it wasn't great timing, but I had to just do it then, I waited for them to come home. I didn't go with them to church that day. And I called my brother and sisters, and they were kind of talking to me on the phone, and finally I saw the car pull up in the driveway, and I was like, okay, I have to go now. And I went and I sat on the stairs and I waited for them to come into the house, and my mom came in first, And when she came around the corner and saw me sitting on the stairs, she knew right away something was wrong because I just didn't look right. You know, I was so nervous. I was like an absolute mess. But, you know, I told her that I'd kind of been, I had discussed this or something like that with my brother and my sisters, and you know, I ended up saying like, I'm gay, like I am gay. I told my mom, like, plain and simple, and she looked at me and she was just like, what? And then she started just screaming. And when I say screaming, I don't mean like words, like she just started screaming, like just, I think she just had to get out the shock or something like that. But as she was doing so, my father came in the house and he heard her, so he comes running and he's like, you know, what's wrong? And she turns to him and she's like, Steven's gay. And my dad, he turned to me and just kind of very, very quietly said, what? Like almost like you can barely hear it. And it really shocked me because growing up, my father was super vocal, super loud, and just, you know, he's very tall, deep, commanding voice, and, you know, he was the one you were afraid of. Like, if something went wrong, you ran to my mom, not my dad. So the idea that he would react to that so quietly was just like one of the most like chilling things to me. And, you know, it started a whole kind of just battle. Not really a battle, but there was just a lot of questions I wasn't, you know, all that prepared to answer. You know, they seemed to think that someone made me this way, or where I got this idea from. Like, it had to have come from somewhere else, you know. And I did my best. And I, at some point, ended up going downstairs in the house. My parents were upstairs, and they came down and they sat with me, and they told me that they didn't understand it, they didn't accept it, but I was their son, and, you know, they loved me. Which was a very touching moment. I really needed that because considering what had just went on, like, I just felt like I was completely lost. So it was great to hear that. And nowadays, it's sort of like, they don't talk about it, they don't want to talk about it. I think that is probably, I think what it is that I just gave them news that I had all this time to kind of process and understand and, you know, work out, whereas I just kind of, you know, they hadn't had the time I had to really understand it. So I hope in time they can be better about it, but I think what it comes down to is when you're at that point, you have to make sure that you are surrounded by people you love, people who support you, because I was lucky enough to have that. My friends really got me through that, because after I came out to them, I just didn't feel like anything, I didn't feel like a valid person, you know, in a weird way. Like, nothing I do would ever matter because of this. And granted, it's a major factor for me, but it's not a defining factor for me as a person. So, you know, I think that if you can get yourself to a happy space, a good space where you're comfortable and, you know, you can pursue your goals in life, that's fine. You know, that's all you really need. You know, going in even further, I think that when I get to the point where I do want to introduce someone to my family, you know, even saying that now brings a certain amount of nervousness to me. But, you know, it's still kind of like, you know, it'll happen one day, and I'll have to just, you know, play it by ear and see how it goes, because I can't control everything. So I think, yeah, just get to a happy place and you'll be just fine.